All right, so
Okay.
we're going to be talking today about user onboarding. Who here onboards users? Right, okay, everyone's hand should be up. That's why we picked this topic. This is so critical to every single thing you do all the time, because when you get somebody at the top of the funnel and you lose them right away, I mean, there's really no point into any of the other stuff you do. And really, it's a place that we really work on, and then immediately we sort of forget until much, much later. And it's such a critical place. And a lot of times people just sort of throw people in and just hope the value add works, but we're here to tell you that's not the case and how to make it better.
Yeah. So how do we make sure that we keep our new users? So what is onboarding? For the user, it's their first visit. So it's their first time sort of seeing your product or seeing your app. And for you, it's about how you welcome a new guest into your home. It's kind of a cheesy metaphor using your house, but
it's a two-way conversation. A lot of times we think it's a one-way conversation, like we're telling our users what we need from them, and that's it. Or sometimes we only think, okay, what do we do? We just give everything the user wants, and maybe we forget that we need to talk about ourselves. Like when you introduce yourself to someone in real life, sometimes you can just talk about yourself all the time. We all hate those people. And also sometimes you can have the person who you feel like they're just drilling you. You know, they're just like going to town. Where do you work? Who's your friend? Are you married? You're not married? I mean, they just like go to town. You're like, geez, calm down. It's a two-way conversation. And so that's the way we like to view it. And so there's a lot of implications of that.
So the question is, what will your guest need to know in order to have a good time? So why is onboarding important?
Yeah, it helps the users learn their basic skills quickly. So this is the thing that we most think about when we think about onboarding. Okay, how are we going to teach the user about our app? But there's a lot more to it than that.
It also helps the user understand the value of the product very early in the experience. And this is super, super important. If they don't get that sort of initial hit of, hey, this thing is actually useful, probably they're going to uninstall.
Yeah, and a majority of apps are uninstalled within a 24-hour period. So a lot of times, I don't know, you've probably all, if you're part of the majority, you're probably all done this. If you've downloaded an app, you've tried it out, and probably within 5 minutes, you're like, that's okay, I'm fine. No thanks. And the reason why that happened was there was initially something that you cared about and you downloaded the app. Maybe you needed some entertainment for a game, or maybe you needed something for this productivity app, but you just weren't having it. You didn't really understand, like you didn't think it was going to deliver because it's a time commitment. There's a resource commitment. There's, it's really a commitment between you and the app. And you didn't feel that you really were sold on the why. And a lot of times, this is the one thing we forget. We think about the teaching a little bit, but we don't think about really selling the user on the why of your product. And we'll get more into that in a little bit.
Yeah. It helps new users feel welcome, as we talked about. So how do you start designing an onboarding experience? Don't know.
I don't know. Just kidding. If you listen to the podcast, you get that reference. So before you think of start thinking of solutions, what you really need to start thinking about is take a step back and what are the different things, what are your goals for this app? What do you need from the user? What do you want to get from the user? And what does the user need to get from you? And like we went over, one of those things is the why. The user needs the why from you. So what's the core value prop of your product? Or, will I need their gender, or do I not need their gender? All these types of things that you have to really think about so you can really customize the experience in a very optimal way.
So in order to define your goals, you need to know what the core value of your product is. It's pretty simple, right? If you are, for example, if you're Amazon, your core value is about shopping. It's not going to be about, whatever, playing video games or whatever. Anyways, defining your core value, that's really important. Additionally, not all onboarding patterns fit every product. So this is really important too, because on the show, we looked at a bunch of different apps and services, and we often talked about onboarding. And it was pretty common to see a lot of the same patterns throughout different products. But really, you have to be careful about reusing patterns that you've seen in different products, because they just won't fit.
Yeah, so if your boss comes up to you and says, oh, I really like the way Snapchat does it, so I want to do this for this B2B app that we have for cloud hosting for servers, and you're just like, I don't think it's necessarily going to work the same, right? It's the same thing. A lot of times we look, either we put up on Dribble, or we pull up, we Google best onboarding, and then enter images, and we're like, all right, I'll just do one of these. So really, you have to think really deeply about what kind of onboarding is appropriate for your app. Sometimes it might be more playful and fun than you might think. You might think, okay, we just need some forms, and then we'll dump them into a zero state of our app with absolutely nothing there, and just hope that they click on the plus in like the in the top right corner. You really have to think about what that's going to look like from the new user. And a lot of times, you guys are the experts at your company, and if the longer you're there, the harder it is to design an onboarding experience, because you know what all the lingo means, you know where all the buttons are, you know how the actions work, but we forget what it's like for a new user, even someone who's a power user or who has a lot of experience with technology. So,
True onboarding. True onboarding can't be skipped. I don't know if you know what product this is from, but if you notice in the very top right, excuse me, there's a little skip button.
And are you inspired? By looking at this, are you super inspired? Are you like, whoa, I'm so inspired right now. Like, this app, I get this app. Like, I'm just so inspired. Like, never tell your users how to feel. Make them feel it, right? So here, they're just showing you a bunch of pictures. What app was this? I don't even remember anymore.
It's Ello.
Okay, oh, it's Ello. That's why I don't remember it anymore. But here, they're just showing you a bunch of art that you can find on there, and they're just saying, hey, you're going to be inspired. But they're not even saying that. They're just saying be inspired, like it's your mom.
Yeah, but even worse is they're telling you you can skip this, which is really important because, as we mentioned, this is the part where a new user is supposed to get the core value of your product. They're supposed to understand why this service is valuable to them, and now you're telling them that they can skip it.
Yeah, and if you're seeing that a lot of your users are just kind of skipping, that's a good sign that this is something you need to rework and rethink. Most of us, we get this huge glob of text and we're saying, all right, whatever, I can figure it out on my own. And Slack even does that. They even say, like, I'll figure it out on my own. So sometimes you're going to need the choice, but a lot of times if you have a skip on there, then you might need to rethink, is this actually that critical? Is there actually a big portion of users who actually need this? And for something like this, where you're just kind of like going over, like, it's going to be really cool, trust me, believe me, it's going to be cool, believe me, like somebody who's the president right now would say.
Okay, so some do's and don'ts. These are all just a bunch of things we found and collected.
Yeah, so this will be super straightforward because a lot of times we talk about, design. It can be really ambiguous. We talk about, like, do really good design, and you're like pumped up, and then you go to work and you're like, what was it? So we're going to give clear examples, do's and don'ts.
So first of all, don't just tell someone about your app. If you look at these two examples, they tell you exactly what the app does, but there's really nothing here that sort of conveys this idea. So on the one on the left, Telegram talks about Telegram delivers messages faster than any application, but it doesn't actually convey this idea other than by having you read this text. Is that really feeling fast? I don't know, not to me, but...
Yeah, the unmarked speedometer or rev engine. Yeah. And also with Inbox, this is one of 4 screens that you would see when you launch Inbox for the first time. And it's like you gotta like write notes on the side. Okay, so I have to get flight patterns. I'll get, and it's if there's a lot of text and it's a lot of just like, all right, give me to the app. A lot of times your users will skip these and they won't really get anything other than it makes you feel good because your flow looks really pretty when you're presenting it.
So instead of that, we talked about on our podcast to show, don't tell.
Yes, we reviewed a game, and yes, it was Candy Crush, and yes, you can blame us and judge us. So the reason why we reviewed it is because it actually has a lot to learn from Candy Crush. So if you don't have an addictive personality, go try this app. And if you don't, have a friend call you up in 4 hours and then make sure you're not still playing this game. Because it's really good at onboarding. You start, 4 hours go by, and you're like canceling a podcast episode because you're still testing the app for the podcast. And the reason why it's so good at onboarding is right away. This is like one of the very first screens, and this is clickable. You can actually click this. And so it's not just saying, okay, you have to click these and it'll switch and then this will happen. You actually just do it and you see what happens. So a lot of times, if you can just get the user to do the action and they can see the reaction, that's the way we learn best. That's the way humans learn best. It's play. It's let me interact with the world and see how it reacts back to me, and then that's play. And this does it really well. And on the other side,
what is that one?
That's an investment app. I think it's called, yeah, Acorns.
Acorns, okay.
So this is actually another, so if you can't get it to be really, really cool and you're kind of confused exactly how to implement this, I think this is a good way. This is a video of someone using the app. So they're talking about dragging left to right on the graph, and that's a kind of a complex interaction. And the first time I downloaded the app, they didn't have this yet, and I was really confused on how to use it. Once I saw this and I saw them how they're using the app, from somebody else using the app and how the app reacted to their thumb touch, then you could see like, oh, okay, I get how that works. So if you can't think up some awesome interaction, then just show a video of somebody interacting with it.
So don't give a classroom lecture on how to use your app. You've probably seen this, I don't know, a bunch of times where they use arrows and point at things and put text all over the screen. That is really, really unreadable to me. But more so, it's hard to understand what to do. Where do you start with any of this stuff? And I would find that most people would get lost. This is Pulse. I'm guessing maybe they fixed this since they've been acquired by LinkedIn, but who knows?
Yeah, and that's a very common one. Another, kissing cousin of that one is the one where it sort of drives you through the app and it highlights something and it's like pulses and it, has like a pulsing dot and it says like, here is the start menu and here, and it kind of goes through the app. Sometimes that can work effectively, but a lot of times users just want to get through it. I mean, I would say most of the time it's the wrong choice. And so try to think of something better. Try to think of a way that you can show, don't tell. Because that's just another version of show, don't tell. If the user is just having to go through and read, and it feels forced and it feels too constructed, then the users will really not respond well to that. Either they'll leave or they'll just skip through it like 100 miles per hour. And it'll be all that hours that the front engineer worked setting that up, and the copy editor won't like just the cutest copy and just like, hey there, glad you tried our app. It won't matter because they'll just blow right through it.
So the way to deal with this is to establish a goal and think about it in terms of what is the one thing that they need to know when they walk away from your onboarding experience. What is the one thing that the user needs to know when they walk away? Very important.
Yeah, because if you don't start with a goal, you're not going to end there. If your goal is to onboard users, you have the wrong goal, and you'll fail at that too. So you really need to think, okay, what is the goal for the app that we need to sell to the user? And that can be something like, or have you seen that really good illustration of the Mario and then you have the fire plant, and then you're not selling this, and it shows Mario with the fire shooting it, and it says you're selling this. So you really need to sell someone on the why of your product, not the what. So if you're file sharing, you're not selling file sharing. You're selling the ability to connect with, to either save your files, or you're selling the ability to do business with people. So really think about it on a deeper level, so that once people have the why, and we've went over this many times on the show, and when we've looked at all the best examples of apps, we found that people will actually go through a terrible user experience if they're sold on the why of a product. I went through and signed up for LinkedIn, and it was like way too long, right? It was just like this huge, long, drawn-out process. But at that point, I was already sold, I need a LinkedIn. And I would go through pretty much everything, like up to like 4 hours, probably, just because I knew I needed a LinkedIn. So if you can sell your user on the why, you can make a lot of mistakes all along the way. You can break almost all of these rules, and your user will probably still stick around. That's why when you start a new app, like probably, I don't know if you remember the first time you started Snapchat, but it was not user-friendly at all. There was a lot of like hidden gestures and small touch points and things like that, but you knew that you needed to be on there, so you tried it out.
So don't just show a utopian vision of people using your product. I mean, Certainly it's nice to use models, and this is from a Nike app. So it's nice to see, beautiful fit models using it and working out, and you can be like that too if you use this app. But in general, it's hard because it's not really the user, right? This is the company showing you things. So again, make sure that they understand the why.
Yeah, that's a good example of the opposite side of you're getting too ambiguous on the why, and you're getting too like emotional and high blue sky with the why of the app, and that kind of comes out as, oh, just let's throw some stock photos of models having a good time in great locations, and that's never going to happen to the user. So really focus on the why, and when you do your user testing, see if they get it. See if they understand what your product does. A lot of people kind of miss that. They just say, okay, complete this task. But first ask them, what does this product do? And I promise you, you'll be surprised. I did user testing with my portfolio, and I had the portfolio of Jonathan Shariat. And I did my first user testing session with a stranger was like, I don't get what this is. And I was like, I guess people don't necessarily know what a portfolio is. I might have to say like my work and then explain that I'm a designer more, stuff like that. So you'll be surprised. Do user testing.
So don't be too salesy. This is Apple Music, as you can see, and in the first screen, they're asking you to start a free trial. Why? I don't know. They want your money, I guess. But the point is don't be too salesy. People don't, I don't know, it's just really unfriendly. You don't want to get sold things. You want to try out this app.
Yeah, it's like going on a first date, and they're like, you sit down, and they're like, so, how long you want to start dating? You want to get married? And no one would be okay with that, and yet, Apple Music thinks it's like the boss, and so it can just say, hey, like, do you want to start a free trial right away? And that's, nobody wants that. This is one of the biggest things that can bounce somebody is asking them to commit right away before they've experienced the why, experienced what the product might look like, been able to interact with the product. These are the things users generally want when they want to experience your app to see if it's something that they want to commit to. So usually it's better to go all the way through and build momentum, which we'll talk about. Oh, there we go.
The next slide. What is this, Duolingo? I actually haven't used Duolingo.
Yeah, so Duolingo does a really good job of this. So Duolingo helps you learn new languages. And of course, learning a language is all about momentum. People can feel really like stuck, and they won't do it, or might feel like this huge task to learn a whole brand new language. What Duolingo does is they start teaching you stuff right away, and then you feel really good, and they give you like this really big like bonus point, like you did it, and they teach you 1 or 2 words, and so it feels really good. You feel like you're building momentum. You feel like, oh, it could be this easy. Maybe it actually could be easy. For your apps, it could be getting them to complete their first send, if it's a file sharing service, back to that. Getting them to do an action that makes them feel, one, committed, like they've already have put in some time with your app, but also allowing them to feel like they have some momentum. So this is what happens. You get this nice little bird, and he says, good job. And this is like 1 or 2 screens of this, and then they ask you to sign up. So you already feel like, one, you're sold on the why of the app. You already feel like you have momentum. And then when they're asking for your email and phone number and everything, it just feels like a natural extension of like, of course, like I can't even wait to get all this stuff in there.
If you do ask for information, make sure you explain why. So here, Rooms is asking you for access to your photos. And they're doing it because that's how you invite people. So obviously the next screen shows you the little notification thing for accessing your photos. You hit OK.
Yeah, because especially with apps, you need permissions. And so you have to ask for them at some point. But if you just throw them up there like right in the beginning and just, like it's kind of the same thing. You're asking for a commitment without giving anything in return. So a lot of times bad design is when the balance of give and take is in the business's favor and not in the user's favor. So if you can, let them know why. Everybody wants to know why. If you've ever started a project and like the person, the manager over you, didn't tell you why they even needed it, they just said, just go do it, just do it. It's really hard to feel passionate or you have a lot of energy for that particular thing. So let the users know why. So if you just tell them, hey, we need access for your photos because you're going to share your photos, or hey, we're going to you contacts because you're going to contact someone and share this picture. So just letting them know why allows them to get a higher rate of getting those permissions, which are really critical for the experience.
So something to counterpoint some of what we talked about. This is a quote from Andrew Chen. I don't know if you guys know who Andrew Chen is. He's heading up growth at Uber. But this is something that he mentioned to me when I wrote a blog post on onboarding, is this idea that there are some actions in the beginning of this process when somebody joins your product that you may not be able to do later on. So if you need to, for example, get their contacts or have them perform particular steps in order to be successful with the product, you might need to do it right now in the beginning.
Yeah, the user will have the most momentum actually right in the beginning because they're getting set up, they're sending all the things that they needed to, they're interacting with the app in the new ways. Usually the most momentum they'll have, like the highest acceleration, will be right in the beginning. So if you need to get a few extra fields of information from them that will help either contribute to the app's experience or just nice to haves for making the product experience more robust, then usually the onboarding is good, but right towards the end when they have a lot of momentum. Yeah, letting your users know what to expect.
Yeah, so this is basically just being clear that, okay, if it's going to take 5 screens to get through this process, you make sure that it's communicated. Well, here there's 4, but make sure that it's communicated very clearly in the design of your page that how many steps they're going to have to go through, and ideally even what's next, what's coming up, what sorts of things to expect down the road.
Yeah, so if you're waiting for somebody to come, it's really hard to wait when you haven't received a text from them, you haven't received a call from them, you have no idea how long it's going to be, right? So just letting the user know what to expect helps the person wait and accomplish all these things a lot better. So this is Slack. I don't know if you've heard of it. They have a they have a great onboarding. And one of the things that they do well, besides, of course, the chat bots and things like that help onboarding, which is really cool too, but they do really good copywriting. I mean, A+. Like, I actually got to talk to the copywriter of this, and she's a genius, and her team. And so here, this is, don't worry about setting the password right now. We'll email you a link to create one. That's a really simple bit of copy, but it really helps the user understand what's next, what's coming, what's expected. Why isn't there an email? Like, usually there's a password thing here. Okay, what do I do next? It's all answered in a sentence. And they do that all throughout the app.
Be polite.
So don't be rude. Again, being rude is kind of getting more than you're offering in return. And a lot of people, like, we get, how much value do you get from your PDF reader? I'm not sure, but it asks for me to update all the time. Yeah. One good-ish example of this is the update from the App Store. So it says, try in an hour, try tonight, and remind me later. And it says, do you want to? So the language is really important, and also giving the user options. Also on the flip side, don't put words in the user's mouth. So don't say like, oh, I'm going to be lazy, I'll do it later. It might seem cute at the time, but users don't like to be degraded like that. So if you go to someone's marketing website, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize this is a marketing site, and you go up your browser to leave, and all of a sudden it throws a popover, and it's like, do you want to join my newsletter? And then there's like, yes, I want to get rich. And there's like, no, I just want to be poor forever. And you're like, I guess I got to click that one, Or if you're like feel really rebellious, you'll go to inspect element and delete it, and you're like, ha, sucker. Yeah. But respect their intelligence, respect their intelligence. And another good example of this is Slack, which is, I won't read the top, but they said, we've seen this problem clear up with the restart of your browser, a solution we suggest to you now with only great regret and self-loathing. Which I love that, because it really shows that they're human and that they're empathizing with you. That yes, you have to restart, but it's not something that we're happy about that you have to do.
So again, don't just copy other onboarding processes. This is the thing we mentioned earlier. The way to do this is to think about your product and figure out what personality it has, maybe show it off a little bit more. Although, be careful, personality and persona is not the same thing. This is an app called Carrot. What was it, the weight tracking or calorie tracking?
Yeah, food and calories.
Yeah, so this is in the beginning of their setup process when you create your profile to start measuring your weight and calorie intake. There's this whole flow that you go through to sign up, and you can set your weight to different things. So, you know, if you say you're 75 pounds, it shows a skeleton, your Skeletor. When you select your gender, you can be a squirrel, although it knows that you're actually not a squirrel.
Yeah, very highly high tech there. We did a whole podcast on this app because it's absolutely amazing. You'll feel inspired, even if you can't feel like you can't exactly do this in your B2B product. You'll get really inspired that, hey, I don't actually have to do it exactly the way that other people do, and we can be a little bit playful. Especially if you can design that into your brand, it becomes even more powerful. For someone like, you know, like Slack, again, they have Slackbot, or some people who have like Hipmunk or something where they have like a character. Sometimes it can really help you create this whole language and playful experience around your app. And this app does it really, really well. Just so designed for play. Let people try things out. In this one, this is where you select your weight, which for a lot of people can be anxiety-inducing, you know, if that's something that they're struggling with.
Or actually pretty mundane.
Yeah, or just mundane.
You just put in a number.
So for both of those people, they're pleasantly surprised when they're switching this around. And you know, if you look like this, if he says like 180 pounds, it gives you like some fun things here, like part-time model or what have you. If you just go all the way up to the scale and max it out, then it kind of does this little marshmallow guy. And then if you go all the way down to absolutely nothing, it does another joke. And it's kind of, it only does it on like the most extreme ends. So it's a little bit playful, which is good for this app, but you know, other apps that could be like even, you know, maybe offensive or something. But so, but it's funny. We both we both reviewed it separately, yeah. And we both admitted we spent like 5 minutes with this thing.
I think longer.
Because it was so fun. There was like all these different like you know, titles you could get here for the different weights, and they're all kind of compliments and stuff like that.
Also, just note the copy up there. Exactly how much does your carcass weigh? I mean, this is yeah. This is asking for your weight. So. Don't use dark patterns. There's that whole website on dark patterns. Please go look at that if you haven't.
Yeah, darkpatterns.org. So dark patterns, they're just a few of them. You know, for example, Roach Motel, where it's easier to get in and hard to get out. So they have a lot of really good ones in there. And it's also a really good tool, darkpatterns.org, because sometimes when you give something a name, you give it kind of the power to defeat that thing. So you know, if you're talking to your boss or your manager and they just like keep telling you to do all this stuff, and you can point to a website that says that's a dark pattern that a lot of people have said this is wrong, and kind of like name and shame. It's really powerful. Trust me. Like I've said it like, oh, this is not a good thing to do for users. But then when I can point to something that has a name, it all of a sudden becomes a much more powerful way to get them on your side.
Yeah. So one way to deal with this is to try to act it out. And this is actually a video. We'll see if this works with the audio. But it's sort of related to the next presentation on checkout processes. But this is a Google service, a Google video on Google in real life.
Tell us. You sure? Yeah. Username? Nick M? No. MM1983? No. Zandy Pops? Sorry. Zandy Pops? No, okay. Don't worry, I'll help. What's your postcode? Oh, it's GU749ZT. Welcome back, Nick Forever. Please listen carefully to this bread license agreement before continuing with your purchase of a loaf of bread. If you do not, blah, blah, blah. You also agree not to use any bread-based product for any purposes prohibited by United Kingdom law, including without limitation, design, development, manufacture of missiles, chemical, nuclear, or biological weapons. Tick. I'm afraid you've timed out. What? Sorry. Hello? Excuse me. Oh, yeah. Hey. Just one loaf, sir? Yeah, we just... What's your username? It's Nick Forever, but number 4, not the... Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to check that you're a real person. Could you say that for me? It's not even a word. Okay, how about this one? You know what? Forget it. What this one? Hey, pot of mice. You're in. Great, I'm in. £8.85. It's supposed to be 98 pence. Plus express delivery. What's that? Oh, well, it's express delivery. It's fast. So there's, standard. Standard. Standard delivery, that's £4.99. Why? Bread insurance. You didn't untick the don't decline bread insurance option. You know what, I think I'll risk it. It is quite close to the sell-by date. Don't care. 98 pence it is. If you want to pop back in 5 business days, it'll be ready for your collection. Well, I need it now, obviously. Oh, okay. You want the take-home today price? Well, that's £3.27. You know what, I'm going to go.
All right, so sorry that was a little bit choppy, but you get the point. Sometimes it really helps to get your experience and kind of write it out. What would that be like? You know, is this natural in real life? Do any of these make sense in real life? So that was a video by Google showing off Google Analytics, and they have actually a few of those if you want to go check it out. And we found that it really does help. Like if you just sort of act it out, okay, like is it appropriate to ask the user for this information right now? Would that be appropriate in a conversation? And so you can try that, and it'll actually reveal a lot of holes and weird, awkward spots in your app.
So the last thing we want to leave you with is this point, that good onboarding is really about the user, not you. So make sure that you're curious and thoughtful about welcoming them as new guests.
Yep. Yeah, so what it all really boils down to is make sure that you have the why of your product down, and that it's clearly both demonstrated to the user and told to the user. And then build up momentum. Make sure you prime for anything that you need them for. Let them know what to expect, and avoid dark patterns and copying other people. That's it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Do we have time for questions? So yeah, any questions about onboarding or specific, challenges?
So we're gonna go ahead and do a Q&A. Yeah. Hi, my name is Anisha. I want to know the difference between onboarding process for new users and current users. I mean, those who already use. Should there be a distinguished place where instead of skipping, the current users will just skip while the new users won't skip and they go through? So should there be a distinction in that, or should it be the same thing?
Yeah. Again, Slack I think is a good example of that, where they know that people sign up over and over again for different apps, and so sometimes you'll have a power user coming through or an experienced user coming through. So there should be an opportunity to skip, but for new users, it should feel like it's something they can't skip. They can't figure it out without it. This is critical information that I'm going to need, or it's really engaging, and I want to experience I want to be sold on the product. I don't know if you've ever felt that way, like, can you just sell me on this? Like, I want to buy this, but I just want to be sold on it first. It's sort of that feeling.
Yeah, I think you need to make a distinction between skipping something and actually giving people access to their accounts. Right? If it's the second thing, maybe instead of skip, you use something like sign into your account or access your data, or I don't know, whatever. But yeah, I think definitely there should be something like that.
Yeah, like I'm a new user, or I'm a returning user, something like that, and then they can go off into teaching about the app, or it's just another account setup.
But it depends too, because I think sometimes, well, depending on when this person has used it last, maybe there's some changes or updates to the product that you've made since then. So.
Because the current users want to feel special all the time.
Yeah. Well, everyone wants to feel special.
Hey, wait. So I really liked what you guys said about explaining why, or I think that you guys shared an article with me once about how to make a sale, or you have to explain everything explain as much information up front so you get them to press the button.
Yep.
Can you think of anybody who does that really well besides Slack? Yeah.
Slack. Well, Candy Crush was one of the ones that we really liked because of the way that it very gracefully brought you into the product. Before you knew it, you were sort of in this extended tutorial. You were, making candies explode and getting power-ups and all kinds of crazy things. And then, if you're not careful, you were like $100 in debt because you were buying power-ups.
Have you ever tried 2 Dots before?
Yeah, that's another good one.
2 Dots is a really good onboarding as well, I think. Anybody?
Oh, I guess I kind of had the same question. Like, do you have any examples of simpler onboarding maybe slideshows, just because these are really cool. I don't know if I could convince my developers to do this immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I'll also check out, what's his website, User Onboarding?
Yeah.
Yeah, where he goes through, and it's actually, like the entire onboarding experience of a lot of popular apps, some, not so popular, but he goes through and he does a really good job of explaining, he does a critique. And it's a great way to learn about onboarding, is to just go through those and read what the apps did well and what they didn't do well. And then maybe you can also get a better idea of, okay, this maybe matches a little bit more of what we're doing. But before you go, picking the one, make sure you just, you focus on what your goal is for your app. What goal does the business have? What goal do the users have in mind? And then go in and pick the appropriate onboarding experience. Yeah, useronboard.com. So that's a great resource because he's awesome, genius, and really entertaining too. So go check that out.
Be careful with slideshows, by the way, because they're sort of passive interaction, and I think what you want to do is engage somebody in the very beginning. So if all they're doing is like swiping through a bunch of slides, it's kind of not that interesting, right? So the more you can do to get them to play around with something, or I don't know what product it is, but even enterprise software could be sort of more engaging in that way. So if you let people try things to maybe make mistakes in the beginning, I think people will generally have a better time.
And real quick, like with the Acorns example, that's something very easy to implement. You have text and you have a video of somebody using it, and that's more effective than just explaining to somebody how cool the app's going to be or how it works. So we understand that there's always resources that we have to figure out what we want to spend our resources on. Hopefully, onboarding is one of those things that's given a high priority, but there's simple ways to implement all these principles.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? Wait, Ben, you have to be on mic. You'll just have to repeat it.
Yeah,
We'll repeat it. I don't like those. I mean, I said skip.
Well, you have to repeat the question.
Right? Oh, sorry. So the question was, what was it? If you...
Yeah, so the question was, if you... Yeah, you hit skip, and then you get the pop-up of, are you sure you want to skip? And yeah, I think if those are useful only for when you're trying to save the user from doing something incorrectly. And in that case, it seems like they wanted to skip and they wanted to go on with their lives. Yeah. And also, even if a user does go through that experience, that might be something that you might want to make accessible in the interface somewhere to go, either relearn or understand the app, or it should just be good enough where they don't need to. But I would say that's not a good place for it. And deleting something or things that you can't go back at the current moment. Yeah. And even with deleting, the best UX is to undo rather than a modal like that. But if you can't technically do that, that's the next best thing, is to ask the user at that point. But for something that they definitely are trying to get through and is not like the end of the world, then I would say don't have that pop up.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, everybody give it up for Jonathan and Chris.
Thanks, everybody.
At Design Review
Thank
Podcast. Where can they visit your podcast?
DesignReviewPodcast.com.